What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. It's weekend. It's Friday. Time to kick back because it's time for the FAANG Stock Recap Show here on the Investor Channel, where every Friday we recap all the major news and the technical chart patterns from all the major FAANG stocks. This week we've got a lot of semiconductor news. You had COMPUTEX, you had AMD, Intel, TSM, a lot of companies, including NVIDIA, obviously making a lot of news there. We have WWDC next week for Apple, so better not waste any time. Kick things off like we always do with Meta Platforms. Start the week at 475, up nearly 3.8% to finish the week at 492.90. Now, the former president, Donald Trump, is vowing to never ban TikTok. A little TikTok of irony in this one is that towards the end of his first term, he actually kind of set this TikTok ban in motion. I think you had Oracle, Microsoft, I think Walmart was in there as a potential suitor there. Now, I think there's, as always with the former president, there is a play on words here. I think he's vowing to never ban TikTok, but that's obviously different than actually forcing TikTok to sell their assets to a United States-based company. Also, this is written and signed law in the United States, and so it'd be difficult for Trump just at a stroke of a pen to take away a law already voted on and passed. Now, Meta Platforms rose this week as Raymond James upped its target on its generative AI ambitions. Now, Meta's being a little sneaky, right under the radar. I mean, not necessarily under the radar. They're releasing a ton of these open source models into the public, allowing people to use them even for commercial purposes, kind of being a little thorn in the side of the proprietary models over at OpenAI and at Google as well. But they are going to take these models and roll them out into their roll out key features into their apps, including WhatsApp. You got a ton of commerce that happens on WhatsApp, and they're going to deploy, and this is Meta, free business chatbots on WhatsApp, potentially to keep a stranglehold on that app being a sender for commerce in a lot of industries. Moving on to Apple, start of the week at 194, heading into the Worldwide Developer Conference. We were up 1.3% to finish at nearly a 52-week high on Apple, has really rebounded from those lows that we saw maybe a month or two ago. Finished the week close to 197. Like we said, Worldwide Developer Conference starts next week. The theme of the show, I think, is based on Swiftly, which is a programming language by Apple. Don't think we're expecting any major significant hardware, at least on the consumer side. We could hear about their ambitions, at least from a data center, from a chip perspective, and obviously on the software side, what they have announced. Could we get an announcement next week that they're partnering with either Google or OpenAI, or maybe even both on the software side for AI? That will be interesting, and that's what I'll be watching for on Monday. I believe it's 10 a.m. Pacific time. You get the keynote, and a lot of the announcements will come. Now, Apple is discussing a deal with China State Media to bring their Apple TV Plus to China. This is obviously going to be a priority for Apple in the next year. You saw them maybe potentially developing an Android app to bring TV Plus to the Android devices, and it looks like they're trying to expand, obviously, into China as well. Now, wearable sales declined 19% for the company in Q1 as you just had a lack of new AirPods. And I think it's kind of hard to innovate on those AirPods anyways. But you also, as you recall, had that watch ban where companies successfully found in a court of law that Apple infringed on some patents held by a company called Masimo, ticker symbol MASI. And Apple's going to have to continue to either work around those patents or work something out with that company. Moving on to Amazon, start of the week at 177. Nice reversal here, up over 3.6%. Finished the week at 184. Amazon's labor union going to be a little thorn in the side for this company as they're teaming up, if you will, with Teamsters, which is just a powerful labor union here in the United States, maybe even globally. I'm not exactly sure, but they control a lot of the powerful unions. They have a lot of good negotiating tactics, good leadership and those types of things, good organization efforts, and certainly some money behind them. And we'll see. This will be a developing story for Amazon if they can kind of fend off the labor unions or if it's something that is going to infiltrate, if you will, a lot of their labor. Now, Amazon's Zoox, which is, I think, a wholly owned subsidiary that's operating these robo-taxis. They're going to expand testing into Austin and Miami, and I would expect this is how the robo-taxi market is going to evolve. You're going to have certain markets, maybe like the Bay Area out here in California, which you can see these things on the road, Miami, Austin, some of these hotspots, and honestly, that's the bulk of the market. If you look at Uber's financials, like they make the bulk of their money in small geographic regions. So it could be that these robo-taxis don't have to be nationwide. They can be geographic centric, but obviously you're going to have a lot of competition as well when you're focused on just specific cities. We'll see obviously how that goes. Moving on to Netflix, started the week at 640, basically flat, finished the week up just fractionally to 641. Unfortunately, those of you that were waiting for this, that Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight is now pushed back to November after Tyson suffered some injuries, and there is some questions, at least online, who knows if they're accurate since it's coming from Twitter usually, that maybe Tyson might not actually be able to pull this off. Now, NBA TV rights, I tell you what, if you're an NBA player, you are going to get a raise over the next couple of years as those rights are going to go to $76 billion over 11 years. That is what these mega tech companies are starting to negotiate as they're starting to push away the ESPNs, the TNTs, and these broke media companies. And the tech companies are going to come in and bid up these rights, and it's going to increase the value of the players' salaries, but also of the teams as well. Moving on to NVIDIA, start of the week at 1,139. I think we get a split either today or it'll maybe execute on Monday. But we were up 6% this week as we head into that news, up over $1,200 as NVIDIA had a antitrust police press release coming out of the New York Times as they're going after, or potentially going after, NVIDIA, Microsoft, and OpenAI. A tad bit rich considering the president of the United States is not allowing them to sell a lot of their high-end chips or the bulk of, or all of their high-end chips into the country of China. So you're operating here in the United States. And so United States companies like Microsoft, like OpenAI, have actually unfeathered access to these high-end chips. And now the antitrust police is going after NVIDIA. We'll see where this goes. I think the attorneys at corporates tend to be a little bit better than the government, but we'll see what happens there. Now, this was an impressive, I watched a ton of the COMPUTEX keynotes. NVIDIA's by far the most impressive, not just based on because the stock price has just soared, but Jensen Huang is just a brilliant, brilliant guy, and they're having this next generation Rubin AI platform that's coming in sometime in 2026. And if you believe what they're stating about the performance level, we are going to continue to see gigantic leaps in performance, even on the new Blackwell designs, which are coming out, I believe, in Q3, Q4. You're going to get a dramatic increase there. And then when Rubin comes, it's even a bigger increase. And so, like, we haven't even begun seeing the type of AI advancements that are coming soon. Now, Intel also unveiled new processors, continuing to gain or regain market share from NVIDIA and AMD. I think it's less about NVIDIA. Intel, I think, has obviously a huge opportunity in consumer PCs. That's still a lot of their bread and butter business. Obviously, data center as well. When AMD was giving their keynote, I think Lisa Su said something to the effect that the average computer chip inside of a data center these days is over 5 years old. So that's obviously a huge opportunity for Intel and AMD. But obviously over the last really year, 5 years, 10 years, every way you look at it, Intel has drastically underperformed. Now, NVIDIA continued certification process of the Samsung AI's high bandwidth memory. We talked about this maybe a week ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Samsung has been promising a new generation of high bandwidth memory. Unfortunately, after NVIDIA tested it, it would get maybe a little too hot and it didn't perform well. So it's not going to make it onto the new chips. But my guess is Samsung's trying to get on the bill of materials for at least the new AI platform coming in 2026, if not an upgrade of Blackwell coming next year. Samsung probably will pull that off, but I've read reports that maybe not. Now, Foxconn, which is a manufacturer, is setting up a computing center based on NVIDIA's Blackwell platform. As NVIDIA did their keynote at COMPUTEX, they talked about Foxconn quite a bit, using kind of their digital twin technology, setting up their manufacturing facilities, and Foxconn obviously being a close partner there. Now, AMD, according to Citi, is likely to get 10% of the data center GPU market as AI competition continues to heat up. AMD obviously has a very valuable product, announcing new versions of the MI, I think 350, maybe it's up to 450 at this point. But on the software side, NVIDIA is obviously still still a leaps and bound ahead. Now, Taiwan Semiconductor's May sales surged 30% as they're obviously seeing a lot of growth across the board. You're also having a trough, it appears, in the consumer PC market. Also, it appears cell phones have ticked up a little bit. But what was really interesting is the Taiwan Semiconductor manufacturer is pondering boosting AI chip production prices for NVIDIA because, as you know, when we go through NVIDIA's earnings, their gross margins seem to expand larger than maybe my waistline when I eat a pizza. And TSM often fields questions on their conference calls from analysts saying, why don't you raise the price on NVIDIA, considering NVIDIA can't go anywhere else, really, to make its chips? Now, moving on to Google, start the week at 173, basically flat, like some of these stocks. Finished the week at 174. Now, Google is avoiding a jury trial in its digital ads case versus the United States government. This is seen as a positive because when you are a large corporation and you go to jury trial, the jury tends to, or sometimes can sympathize with the United States government versus a large multi-billion-dollar corporation. When you get a judge to hear the case, the judge, and again, judges are biased just like anybody else out there, one way or another. But when you get a judge to rule, a judge, he or she tends to look at the letter of the law most of the time, rather than maybe a jury of 12, which could vote really any way. So that probably is seen as a positive for Google. Now, Bing, owned by Microsoft, obviously is gaining market share on desktop computers, as it's likely a default on whatever browser is default on PCs these days. But obviously, Google continuing to maintain market share will obviously keep an eye on that going forward. Moving on to Microsoft, start of the week at 414, up 2%. Finish the week at 423. You're going to want to see that technically. Oppenheimer saying Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI makes it the premier AI platform. But here's the kicker. Here's what's interesting about OpenAI's deal with Microsoft. The deal is only for current generation GPT. When OpenAI achieves AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and when or if they reach an AGI, and the determination if OpenAI reaches AGI will be done by the board of directors. And now, while Microsoft does have a seat on the board, it doesn't have voting power. Once OpenAI determines, and again, this is by humans on the board of OpenAI, once they determine OpenAI has achieved AGI, that does not transfer over to Microsoft. So Microsoft actually has been frantically trying to develop their own models. We've done press releases and covered stories on that here on the channel. Microsoft actually devoting the most of their computing power to training their own models rather than OpenAI. I think they view OpenAI as a bridge to get to where they want to go, but the end destination is going to be Microsoft controlling their own AI. And then if OpenAI comes up with something that's called AGI, well, at that point, that will not be a part of Microsoft. Now, the company plans to cut hundreds inside of its Azure cloud business, as you can see, continuing restructuring in that cloud business. Moving on to Tesla, start of the week at 181, down about 2%, finished the week at 177. We've got an annual meeting coming up with Tesla, and will Elon Musk walk away with 25% voting control, which he says more or less that he kind of needs in order to be fully engaged in Tesla going forward. So there is some risk for Tesla going forward that maybe Elon Musk either takes a back seat, if you will, at Tesla, maybe walks away altogether, or he gets that 25% voting control, and depending on who you ask, that's either good or it might be bad. Now, Elon Musk accused of $7.5 billion inciting trading by a Tesla investor. We'll see where that one goes. Now, Elon saying that Tesla will spend up to $4 billion this year on NVIDIA AI chips. I tell you what, NVIDIA is putting up, I think, $27 billion a quarter. This is just their AI chips. $4 billion is, it's actually a lot. So it makes you wonder what Microsoft is spending over there. Now, AI intrigue, as Elon Musk reportedly directed some of Tesla's NVIDIA chips to go to XAI. So chips meant to go to Tesla were diverted to his other company, which is not obviously owned at all by Tesla or its shareholders. So this is what has some people one side or the other with Elon Musk. He's obviously a great operator and obviously is a great builder of business. But at the same time, does he put his interests in front of of you, the shareholder. Could these NVIDIA chips gone to Tesla and been a competitive advantage for the electric vehicle maker, which if you own Tesla, you are a shareholder of, rather than going to a quote-unquote private company in XAI? We'll see what happens there. Now, China-made sales improved for Tesla, but obviously there's huge EV challengers still taking market share in China. And I tell you what, if you go on YouTube and you look at some of these China-made EVs, I mean, there's like a million of them, and they look really, really, really good. So needless to say, Tesla's got some work cut out for them in China. Now, speaking of work, let's go to the technical segment of the program. Simply confirmed a new higher high. This uptrend is just still intact. You should be buying the dips. You're probably buying this one when it just ticks down a penny during the trading day. I'm kind of kidding, but I mean, this one is really, really overextended, waiting for pullbacks. Those pullbacks could coincide with a rate cut. That might be your time to move. Now, very interesting from a technical perspective with Meta. We've been waiting for it to get above this 480 period, and that's what we just did. Boom, blasted out above it. I think there's some shorter term money opportunities here. This is more or less what the technical segment is all about. Broke above that resistance level. I mean, there's some resistance up here, but I tell you what, your overhead resistance really doesn't come into play till 529. You can have a stop loss here at 482, which maybe actually slightly underneath that because we could retest that area, but you could play a little $30 bounce, risk maybe $7, $8 to the downside with Meta, at least in the shorter term. Now, not in the short term, but Apple has been trading sideways for a while, and now we are retesting areas that we tested back in July of 2023. We retested them in December of 2023, again in January of this year, and here we are in June, retesting this area right at 196. Will the developer conference next week announce something that can push the shares up over and above this level? Seems to me all the rumors that we've seen from the credible analysts, particularly over at Bloomberg, doesn't seem like it to me, but the market is kind of funny in those ways. They might latch onto something, and depending on how the news is spun, could shoot shares up, and you could have a nice momentum breakout on Apple that obviously would probably push the rest of the markets up as well. A breakdown in Apple likely break down other areas of this market. First area with Apple that you're actually excited about is probably back here at 180. Moving on to Amazon, looking really good. We found support in the middle of the channel. We're obviously been on this gigantic upswing forever. Started retesting areas of the middle of the channel. Nice reversal here. Doesn't really tell us anything until you confirm a new higher high. You need to get close to 195, 200 on this one for the excitement to really start to build again. Moving on to Netflix, just hanging out really at the top of the range. You've more or less have been going kind of sideways since January from 556 up to about, we'll call it 650. Looks like to me you're destined to maybe retest these highs at 705. Rejection in Netflix. I mean, there's not a clear area where you would want to step in on this one. So you kind of just got to hold your breath and probably do it. Now, NVIDIA extending out over and above a technical trading range that it's really been in for 7 years now. We're over and above it as you had those stock splits. Probably have some people pile in. You do see an acceleration of volume, while not dramatically higher volume, slightly higher volume at these levels. Pullbacks in NVIDIA back to 1100, probably more specifically back to 950. More or less probably should be bought. Google still in a very, very steep uptrend, looking very, very strong. No weakness here. You're looking for a break above. Obviously, Apple could help propel this one higher, as maybe a partnership with the two companies could propel this one higher. Although you get news where they maybe partner with Microsoft, you could get dip opportunities. Those occurring south of 160 probably should be bought with Google. Moving on to Microsoft. This one's still making higher highs, higher lows. We're hugging the bottom of the channel, still churning higher, but we're not really confirming a new higher high yet. I'd like to see this one get above probably 440, and that would confirm that. Moving on to Tesla, you have very much indecision in the shares. They are just consolidating sideways. The volume is basically the same every single day. You're waiting for this shareholder meeting. That could be the momentum that sends us higher. You move higher on Tesla. I think you take some profits, especially as you move into the 210 area. A breakdown in Tesla, you could argue that those are your buying opportunities The first one probably retesting this low, maybe down here at 139. Folks, that was FAANG Stock Recap Show for June 7th. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Stay cool. It's hot in a lot of places, particularly here where I live in Northern California. And I hope you have a great weekend and a safe one. We'll see you again very soon. Good luck with your investments.